final version of it? Okay. This is really not an easy thing to, it's really hard. So much of it is subjective.
Yeah, I can talk to you. Yeah.
The red.
Well, I think that's a fair. Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
Well, the trees don't cover it. Well, of course, in
Folks
the
have their
winter.
corporate thing,
Yeah.
and they,
Well, and you know, being a business owner, I understand what colors mean. I really loathe to vote against that if because it is part of your identification. But it's still.
Will help a little.
but then you go places like, then you go places,
Cars going in and out. You
go
know.
ahead. It's always my example,
Yeah.
always my example of
Yeah.
places.
But we don't have that.
No. Well, we didn't start it,
No. Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
They were a planned community from the get-go,
Yes.
and they did all
That
that.
was the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's kind
I'm
of hard to
upset.
switch horses.
So sorry. How long have you lived there?
How many pages is it?
I was just telling her I knew Ed and Betty.
Something
Nicest. Did you know Ed and Betty? They were just
Night
awesome.
ties, I think.
They were.
Then I'm from
I met their
Morristown,
daughter.
and there was something that I was sitting yesterday that I saw in the Morristown paper, where that same thing, somebody was putting up a 15-foot elephant sign at their establishment, and it didn't become because it was just the elephant. It didn't mention the name of the business or anything.
Oh yeah.
Art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they were really good people. Cared a lot about the community.
They assigned a check for nearly $400,000 for the school.
Oh,
My hair.
want to call the meeting back to order, please? And we have some, yeah, it's,
Can I get one follow-up before?
can I take that home with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
take
could
one
use that at
too.
home.
Regular at the planning commission meetings.
John Hoffman, back for one more comment, if I may, please. During the break, I asked the architects if the colors that were vivid on the front of the building went all the way around, or if it was just on the front. The answer is it goes all the way around. And so in response to that, in response to Ron's question earlier, what can we do? That would be one more thing I would ask. Let's have some much more muted colors in the back. Those trees are nice in the summertime, but it's not going to block the view in the wintertime. It's really not going to block it from October until April. Let's soften up those colors, something blander, if I may say, use the word, especially since it's primarily employee parking back there. What difference does it make in terms of the image of Chili's? So, with that, I'll hand these back to you guys.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Tim Eason. I live at 11312 Gates Mill Drive, and I'm actually here at the request of the residents that live directly behind the Chili's, who were not able to be here tonight, and I live 3 doors down. But if I could, she asked me to read something that has many bullet points that really I think were already addressed tonight, but if I could read this, and I have copies for everyone if they would like. I'm speaking on behalf of Tom and Debbie Raines, who live at 11324 Gates Mill Drive. They're out of the country and unable to be here tonight. As Sweetbriar homeowners whose properties are most closely adjacent to the recently rezoned property, we would like our input considered in the further development of the property. Our lives will be impacted nearly 24 hours a day, every day of the year, so we feel that any accommodation that will lessen that impact should be seriously considered and implemented if at all possible. Sound absorbing wall constructed prior to development on the edge of the buffer. Thick, tall vegetation on the restaurant side of the wall, preferably Leland cypress, to further block the view. Volunteer Lawn Service has investigated this situation and has potential recommendations. the lowest impact lighting possible per environmental standards with no light shining toward our properties. Dumpsters placed on the side of the property, not against the back buffer or the back corners of the property. Dumpsters empty during regular working hours, not at 4 or 5 a.m. Deliveries made during working hours. No outside patio dining. No exterior loudspeakers or music. And no pickup door at the rear of the building with stringent noise control during after-hours cleanup. In short, we're asking for constant consideration for the fact that homeowners are 100 feet away. During the rezoning process, a previous written agreement requiring the property to remain Zone 013 between developer Jim Nixon and the residents of Sweetbriar was ignored. Our rights, well-being, and property values were traded for a few $1,000s of potential tax revenue. The 3 homes whose properties touch this parcel represent $500,000 in renovations and improvements in the last 3 years. The proposed development is our worst-case scenario, a restaurant bar serving alcohol open late into the evening. It seems only fair that everything possible be done to lessen the considerable impact this development will have on adjacent homeowners. The Planning Commission stood solidly behind the homeowners before, only to be overturned by a 3-2 vote by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We thank you for standing with us then, and we ask that you would carefully consider the plans submitted now, being mindful that homeowners are trying to live their lives less than half a football field away. And on a second note, I was here for the meeting back in February, and there was a promise by the developer. I live directly behind the Panda Express, so I'm about 3 houses down from the Chili's. And they promised that if this were to be pushed through, that they would also complete the fence behind my property at the Panda Express and the TVA Credit Union. And I just wanted to reiterate that promise and hope that maybe at the time that the fence is constructed behind Chili's, that they could fulfill the promise to put the one behind our property as well. And I thank you for your time.
Ken Chipley, 11602 Gates Mill. Yeah, our homeowner association, I happen to be, I think I'm treasurer now. We violently, adamantly objected to this rezoning back, and we appreciate y'all's vote not to rezone, and then it got overturned in the alderman. But, I have a copy of the letter. Y'all all got copies of the letter. Edlin sent everybody copies of the letter, I think. So, we got, Jim Nixon's signature on the page says that, if y'all won't object to the public shopping center rezoning, we'll promise to always keep that office. And, here we are today with a Chili's in the backyard. So I think I was going to bring up what he just said, that we were promised that there would be a completion of the fence behind the TVA Credit Union and the Panda Express. Hadn't happened yet. We haven't seen any extra landscaping work in the buffer zone to try to beef it up and to try to make it thicker. That was something that they talked about. Hadn't happened yet. So, we're kind of at the wit's end on this here promises thing. It's not really working out real well for us. And so if whatever we can do, I think the idea that John had about muting the colors on the back of the building would be great. And we'll just have to look at the lighting plan and see if we can understand how it's going to work out. It can't be any worse than the Best Buy sign that shines across there right now anyway. So it's a pretty bright sign, by the way. So we would appreciate your consideration, anything you can do to help us to get through this. But this is not a good system. The noise from I live on the other side of Gates Mill. I'm not anywhere near this thing, and I can hear the dumpsters emptying at night, and it's pretty annoying at 5 a.m. in the morning to wake up to the dumpsters hearing it. I'm probably 500 yards away from the 300 yards away from the place, and I can still hear it. So appreciate y'all's help. Thanks for what you did.
Good evening. Martha Brock, 11521 Gates Mill. I'm a recent move here, but my sister has lived in Sweetbriar for 17, 18 years. I'm just coming up to say that I'm someone who supports the Chili's. I think they need to have somebody who says that it's okay. Yes, I feel really bad that Turkey Creek Development said one thing and now has changed it, but I'm also an historian, and I know things change over time. Plans to have something be office changes to something being not office. I know for myself and for my sister who couldn't be here tonight because she's out of town, office for us is worse. They're bland buildings, there's lights all the time, lights on in the office buildings. I totally understand the people who live right behind this. I get that. I totally get that. I actually think a wall should be built, not a fence. And I come from a city where that's what they build next to the interstate with the homes. I was born and raised and just moved here a few months ago from Washington, D.C. The walls can actually look really nice. So I would suggest you look into something like that. We have, in D.C., they put the walls between the Beltway and the homes along the Beltway. But having grown up in Washington, D.C., do you know where the closest Chili's to me was? 10 miles away. I was born and raised in a place that we didn't have these kind of opportunities to go to what you all call a chain store. I see a chain store as opportunity, jobs, free enterprise. My sister moved in here 18 years ago almost, and the only thing that was ready to go in was the Walmart. She purposely bought in Sweetbriar because Turkey Creek was going to have shopping. To be able to go 2 miles to get to something where you could afford things is unheard of in Washington, D.C. We had to fight to get a Walmart. So just want to know that there is some residents there, my sister and myself included, who do feel for these people. I, again, live on the other side of Gates Mill, like the last gentleman. I can hear the interstate from my bedroom. But you want to know something interesting? It's a lovely noise. I grew up in a city, and I'm still trying to get used to the fact that you don't have sidewalks and streetlights. It's something different for me. I'm trying to get used to that. I don't know if I like it or not, to be honest. So, excuse me, that was quite rude. I sat here and listened to you be rude to these people who are trying very hard to be neighbors. And that's not appropriate. The whole point of this, I'm a historian and a teacher, and I actually enjoy coming to listen to this because I teach government. I'm someone who will probably come to more of these even if I don't have a stake in something that's on the agenda. We're here to listen to each other. And I have every right to stand here and say that I support that there's a Chili's there. I do hope that you do look into something, and I'm really shocked that, yes, if these people were promised a fence and didn't get it, they need their fence. I would actually propose that you look to doing a sound wall. Look into other cities that do sound walls. I actually know places that do those lights and know exactly what those lights are. We had to do it at the school I was at in Maryland. So I just wanted to have somebody up here saying it's not the end of the world. Thank you.
I would like to ask, I believe it was Tanya, is that right? Do you believe that it would be possible to amend the colors on the back of the building to just go to I'll call them more the earth tone, the main ones?
Yes,
Okay.
we can work with staff to figure something out.
Okay.
Can I ask, is it the responsibility of Turkey Creek Partners or Chili's to finish the fence at least behind this building?
I'm not sure, that Danny can speak to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. That is Turkey Creek Land Partners. And we did agree as part of the rezoning of this parcel to complete the fence behind Panda and Tennessee State Bank that's there. Not sure what happened as to why those didn't get completed. But yes, we planned on starting here at this property and going all the way down and making the connection. We've been out to look at where we can possibly plant landscape material. That's a thick buffer. I walked it yesterday with John Stowers from Volunteer Landscaping. Even some of the pines that they've planted in there before have died because it's such a thick buffer. So what we're going to suggest and recommend is that it be on one side or the other of the existing buffer. There's a few pockets there where we can add some material that's actually getting some sunlight, and I have some pictures there. But for the most part, it's a pretty dense buffer that doesn't get a whole lot of sunlight. So I'm a little concerned about planting trees actually in the buffer versus on either side of it. But we're open to all that, and we do plan to complete the fence as promised.
When is that going to happen?
We can start now. It just depends on the grade work and where the finished line is there. But I think the buffer line is actually staked on this parcel. So we just need to make sure that we get it marked where it needs to be going across the adjoining properties. But we can probably start that as long as it doesn't interfere with any of the construction, which I don't think it will on their parcel. We can start that at any time within the next couple of weeks.
And who is required to put, what kind of trees or they're going to put on the chili side of the landscaping? What are we looking at there?
Well, all that we can require Chili's or anybody else that comes before this body is what is in our ordinances or our design standards. So the plant material that we could hold them to are the ones that meet their size requirements and our landscaping requirements. You know, and that's 2-inch caliper for deciduous, single stem type tree, 6-foot tall evergreen at planting, 8-foot tall multi-stem deciduous. You know, those are the minimum sizes. If somebody wants to work out something with, you know, between themselves for material that's much greater in size, then that's between them. We can't require that of them.
Some of the materials we looked at with Volunteer were some of the Leland cypress. They're fast growing, they grow wide, they provide a great screening material. They're not Mark's favorite, I know, but they do provide a great screening material. We also looked at some of the Nelly hollies, some of the magnolias. There's certain species of those that stay low and bush more than growing tall with the trunk. So there's several different species, and yes, and they're evergreen, so you keep the leaves on.
I would think an evergreen would be the most suitable for there, so that it remains.
Right.
And as it grows in and grows thicker, there is more, at least some opportunity to block some of.
Yeah, there would be no need to plant any type of deciduous trees. You're going to just have the same problem come the fall. So anything that we'd be looking to plant for these neighbors would be some type of evergreen tree, something that would.
And the fence as opposed to a wall, a soundproof wall?
The fence is what's been required from one end of Turkey Creek, I think, to the other. And so I think it's the condition that was part of the rezoning condition was that we complete the fence. We've not experimented with walls. We don't know a lot about how those walls are constructed, and you know, right there's a little bit of terrain drop off there. You know, what I would prefer to do is what I had suggested originally, even just in this section, was to double panel the wall or the fence there. Right now it's a one-sided panel, and in some sections it's a little bit of a shadow box, which provides some gaps between the boards for sound to travel through. In this particular section that leads coming from the east, it's actually solid panels. They're not shadow boxed out. So I suggested that we continue with that type of fence and then add another row of boards on the other side of the fence so that the neighbors, if they do see through that, they're not looking at the back of a fence and they're getting kind of double the sound barrier there.
What's the height?
That's an 8-foot fence. Those are 8-foot fences there.
This is my last word, I promise you. I agree with Martha, and I didn't catch her last name, that the homeowners, of whom I am one and are the other 6, want a wall. We want a soundproof wall like they have along the highways. And we don't care whether it's in the ordinances or not, because we find that this is an extraordinary measure and that we would like for this to be an extraordinary decision. You are our last bastion of protection. And we like a wall, and we'll take care of what's on our side of the wall, but we also want a wall and then evergreens, or I know Mark doesn't like Leland cypress, but they grow real fast and real thick. And we want mature plantings. We don't want little sticks. So that's all I have to say.
And
Thank you.
as Mark says, we can only require what the ordinance states.
Well, I understand that, but we want a wall.
We don't even require the fence. That's something, as I understand it, is something that was worked out with the property owner and the residents. So, I mean, all that stuff is something that needs to be worked out between them.
That's something that they can sit down together and,
That's up to them, working out with the property owner, or whomever needs to work that agreement out. What I'm saying is, we can't legally require somebody to do something that we don't have the authority to require them to do.
their best alternative is to set up a meeting with these people, with Turkey Creek Land Partners, and go from
As far
there.
as that stuff goes, now we can, to try to address architectural design standards and things, we can do a lot more landscaping like we've talked about. I think that's, consistent, and the colors of the building. The lighting, certainly we can address that. We have the ability in our ordinances and our design standards to deal with those things. Some of this other stuff is really going to have to be privately negotiated.
The homeowners understand and know what is and what isn't something the town can deal with, and, okay. Okay, so,
Well, I'm prepared to take a stab at this.
okay.
So we may need to pray before I start. So I'm going to move for approval with the existing subject twos as well as 2 additional ones. The 2 additional would be the 16 parking spaces in the back of this piece of property be designated as employee parking, and that the colors on the back of the building be the standard earth tones that are designated in their color palette that went around earlier. I'm going to make a statement and then also a request. The request would be, as is stated in the architectural design standards. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just the one piece here about I'm going to go generic, beefing up the landscaping, working with staff on that. The other thing and I'll make this statement as an alderman, and Mark, if you would deliver a message for me tomorrow, I'm going to ask the town administrator to send a letter to Waste Management or whoever is the main trash gatherer in that area, and ask them if they would amend their schedule. We don't have a legal authority over them as a community, but in past conversations, when we were considering doing some different method of trash pickup on a community-wide basis, my impression is that they were very reasonable people. So I will tell you that I will ask the town administrator to formally send them a letter to see what can be done to minimize that. So, Mark, if you would just have David, either you can communicate that directly to him or have him call me for any clarification. So I think the mayor would probably support that initiative as well. So there's my motion.
Okay, does everyone up here understand that motion? No, okay.
Okay, I'll try again. I'm moving for approval with the existing subject twos and 2 additional items, that the parking spaces in the back be designated as employee only, and at the back of the building, the color palette be reduced to just the earth tone colors.
Ask clarification, the interior island, do you not requiring that just addressed, just to beef up the landscaping in lieu of that?
Right.
Is that what you're?
Yes, that's where I'm at.
And then the colors on the remaining elevations of the building, other than the south elevation, can be the red?
Yes.
As far as, I'm just clarifying what you're.
Yeah, based on the colors that were passed around earlier.
Based on, the example.
Second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Moving on to item number 12, discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone a portion of parcel 78.01, tax map 142, located at 200 Boring Road, from R-1 to from R-2 to R-1, Ryan Lynch applicant.
Ryan Lynch, 5109 Catalina Road, Knoxville, Tennessee. We're thankful for your time, and we read the comments and we're satisfied with them, so we ask that you recommend approval based on the staff's comments.
Y'all have, you want me to give you an overview
Would you
briefly
please,
of what
for-
we're trying to do here? The parent tract here goes all the way back to Country Manor. Let me see if I've got it. Our piece of property, which is about 9.5 acres roughly. And there's someone interested in purchasing this property, but they're to build a house on it initially, maybe to subdivide it further in the future. But and they're wanting to not purchase roughly this area here that they're dividing out, there's currently a barn and a shed, which is shown there in gray, that actually extends well across the property line, where the property line would be when this subdivision plat is presented. Basically, the reason they're requesting a rezoning is that in the R2 zoning district, agricultural structures, if it's a newly created lot, like is what's being proposed here, they have a minimum of 5 acres. So if they're proposing a lot that's less than 5 acres, that would not be allowed. They'd have to remove that structure entirely. So what they're requesting is to rezone it to R1, which is what most of the surrounding parcels are already zoned. You can see there on the screen. So that, because in R1 all you need is 1 acre to allow agricultural uses and structures. They'd like to continue using the main portion of the barn, and they will have to remove, the staff is recommending, and certainly we've talked with the applicant about this, they'll have to remove the shed portion of the structure, actually all the way back to at least 35 feet from where that rear property line would be platted, so that it would meet the setback requirements for an agricultural structure in R1, which is 35 feet from all property lines. The main barn is actually very old and I'm told kind of historic, so they're going to maintain that and keep using it for agricultural purposes. But that's really the main reason for this rezoning request, is so they can continue to use the barn on a lot that's less than 5 acres. They will be coming before you with a plat probably next month. So the staff does recommend approval of the resolution, which recommends approval of the rezoning ordinance request. We would stipulate that rezoning be conditioned on the removal of the agricultural structure to at least 35 feet from what would be the rear or any of the new property lines, and then the submittal of a plat that would actually establish that as a new property, because zoning lines in the town have to follow property lines. So, and we've already talked with the surveyor and the applicant about this. I don't think they have any issues with that, but with those stipulations, the staff does recommend approval of this rezoning request.
Mark, just a real quick question. So someone wants to develop the rear end of that property, is that what you're saying?
Well, my understanding right now, the interest is to build an individual home with maybe the potential
Okay.
to subdivide it at some future time.
Do we need to be concerned with access to that property with this rezoning, or?
Not with this rezoning. That's something we'll look at with the plat. My understanding is They would like to plat an access easement. I could be corrected on this, off of Boring Road, and then they'll also have, it doesn't show up on the screen
It
there,
looks
but
like maybe just
the
at
the parcel actually fronts on Dixie View in Country Manor. So, you know, basically it'd come in off of Dixie View if you were to subdivide the property further.
Okay.
But it would certainly not be the staff would recommend an access easement, you know, along that eastern property line of the smaller lot that would become a access walking trail easement, because at some point the walking trail would be required along the Boring Road frontage, since it's a collector street. They would have to request a variance to not construct that as part of the subdivision plat when it comes before you, possibly next month, because there is an existing walking trail that actually stubs to the western part of this property that was built whenever Michael Bates developed Country Way. It's, I think it kind of just basically kind of drops down like that. The goal at some, obviously with the town's objectives of trying to promote pedestrian facilities would be to extend that in some fashion, further east. That'll be something that we'll talk about with the plat.
Okay.
I'll move for approval.
Second? Second?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 14, discussion and public hearing on the adoption of the vested property rights ordinance and amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance and the Farragut subdivision regulations to address new legislation regarding vested property rights as established in the TCA 13-4-310.
Talked a little bit about this last month as a workshop item, and the staff and the town attorney have maybe overthought this, but we've made some revisions to the ordinance that was in your packet. Our town attorney had gone to kind of a workshop in Nashville, and this was one of the topics that was discussed. So we've made some adjustments, not really anything substantive, but basically just mostly legal stuff, just changing the formatting, kind of naming the ordinance to basically reference that it's development standards that are being vested. Really, if you look at the statute in the Tennessee Code, that's what we were trying to parallel, was our proposed ordinance to the language as it exists in the Tennessee Code that was approved in late last year. We've added a purpose and intent section to clarify what we're trying to do here, what we are allowed to do under state law. And then we've also added a new section that spells out the plans that would constitute development plans entitled to vest. Clarified that the vesting would only be to the extent allowed in the state law. Again, a lot of this stuff is just kind of solidifying the wording from a legal standpoint, to make it a little cleaner, and to maybe address some interpretations that may not be favorable that we kind of anticipated. The plan approval section, we basically added some language in there that clarified that the approval of a development plan is something that actually has to be acknowledged in writing by the town staff. So that clarifies that it's the town, not an applicant, that determines whether the conditions or subject tos that the planning commission or the board may have had on a particular item have been satisfactorily addressed. You know, if you approve something subject to items being addressed, well, maybe the applicant may think they've been addressed, but the staff is in disagreement. So we tried to clarify that it actually has to be acknowledged in writing by the town staff that those conditions have been satisfactorily addressed. So really, that's what we did in both ordinance 1517 and 1518. 1517 is just creating that new chapter in the municipal code in the land use section, which would basically establish the vested property rights in development standards ordinance. And then 1518 is basically an amendment to the zoning ordinance where it currently talks about expiration of site plan approvals. And then that would just basically cross-reference the new ordinance that we're creating in the municipal code. You would need to act, obviously, on those separately. We're not presenting the resolution to amend the subdivision regulations tonight because that resolution references the ordinance that would have to then go on to, yes, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So we'll present that next time, assuming that the board approves those two ordinances. Because changes to the subdivision regulations do not have to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. You know, once you all approve the resolution, it's finished, but we didn't want to present something for you to improve that hasn't been created yet. So with those maybe complicated modifications, I don't know if I explained it. It's a very complex little law that it's hard to read, and yeah, we've given it a lot of thought, I can say that. But we would recommend approval of, I guess first we'll take up the resolution that would recommend approval of ordinance 15-17. That would be resolution PC 15-14.
I have a,
I know,
got a question?
Yes, sir. Oh, I don't want to answer any questions about this.
Has the town attorney concurred in this?
Oh, yeah, he's basically written most of this. I've just kind of cleaned it up and, well, not cleaned it up, but just formatted it into our municipal code language. He and I have kind of, and we've, yeah, I've.
Said Tom had gone to a seminar that included discussion of this last week, and that's what prompted some.
Yeah, I think he
updating
made
of the
some good
updating.
modifications to it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm very happy with the ordinance. Yeah.
yes, there you go.
Yeah.
I'd like to make
And
a
not
motion to
verify.
approve resolution PC 15-14, which recommends approval of ordinance 15-17.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'd then like to make another motion to approve resolution PC 15-15, which recommends approval of ordinance 15-18.
I second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any public hearings on proposed location of new utilities?
No, not this evening.
15, 2015.
Oh, could I make one comment?
Oh, okay.
It's a comment on what is, and that has to do, is this the new branding for the town of Farragut?
Yes.
Yeah.
I find it very offensive. The former Admiral Farragut said, "This is Farragut. I'm proud to be Farragut." This says, "I'm weak." And I don't understand this phrase, "live closer, go further." I don't understand that. But I just think it does not represent what this town has been about for 35 years. My first car was a pea green, 1957, two-door, six-cylinder, straight shift. Chevrolet. And that's what I think of. Nobody wanted to ride with me. It was so ugly. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Damn the torpedoes full speed ahead. Damn the torpedoes full speed ahead.
Damn the logo, full speed ahead.